أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. We, the Muslims, are passionately aware of politics. We are passionately involved in politics. Political issues are always uppermost in our minds. This is because Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself established a state in Medina. From Medina, we went on to establish a worldwide civilization and political power of Islam. This global civilization of Islam lasted for 1,000 years. Eventually, we lost our preponderance to the Western civilization. We have to regain our preponderance. How is this to be done? We are beginning to do this. We are beginning to think about it. We have had an Islamic revolution in Iran. But there is much more to it than that. It is often said that we cannot regain our former glory because we are so divided. We wanted to dispel this idea, and to do so, the Muslim Institute invited ulama, scholars, students, writers, journalists, and other active members of the community from all over the world, of all schools of thought, Shia and Sunni, to London to a seminar on state and politics in Islam. I had the rare privilege of presiding over this seminar. At the beginning of the seminar, I made a few points to the assembled guests. We have also come together because we believe at the present time considerable confusion exists among all Muslims everywhere over some of the most central issues facing the Ummah all over the world. And these central issues concern primarily the issues of state and politics in Islam. Our view is, and has been for some considerable time, that Muslim political thought is moving towards a new stage of consolidation. Over the last 100 or 200 years, Muslims have suffered a loss of political dominance. The loss of political dominance is something that we had not expected. From the moment of the coming of Islam, Islam and Muslims have always secured political dominance for themselves over their own affairs and also largely over the affairs of their neighbors. This political dominance, the loss of this political dominance, was a new experience for the Muslims. For this, they were psychologically, mentally, physically, even spiritually not prepared. Is it possible for non-Muslims to be scholars of Islam? Our answer today is no. But unfortunately, a great many of our elders have sat at the feet of these Orientalist scholars to learn Islam. This was part of their attempt to disintegrate Islam, Islamic society, Islamic culture, Islamic civilization. They have mounted attacks, broad frontal attacks on Islam, on the person of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They have presented Islam as medieval, as an obstacle to growth and progress, as barbaric in its punishments. They have attacked polygamy, and they have presented the Western civilization as the better alternative to Islam, Islamic history, and Islamic civilization. In my submission, after this brief opening remarks, one of the great challenges facing the Ummah now is to assess the extent of penetration into our societies achieved by the Western civilization. And I believe that we here at the seminar ought to give a great deal of our time and attention to the assessment of this damage that we have suffered, our societies have suffered, and how this can be remedied. The non-Muslim scholars of Islam, of course, brought their partial paradigm. to bear upon the total paradigm of Islam. It is not possible for a partial system of thought to overcome a complete system of thought. And this is a failure that is becoming clear and obvious, at least to us at this present time. But of course the Orientalists will not give up. They will not accept defeat quite yet. They achieved, however, or attempted to achieve, two major objectives. They tried to create a body of modern scholars of Islam in order to compete with the learning of our ulama. And they also tried to create scholars, intellectuals, and others who will support the political systems created by the West in the Muslim areas of the world. The difficulty is that they try to introduce disorder into an ordered Islamic civilization and society. Now, of course, I am not saying that everything in the house of Islam had been bright and beautiful and in its place. The house of Islam itself had weakened enormously before we finally yielded our power and dominance to the Western civilization. Our own contribution to our own defeat is no less than the contribution of our enemies. However, we cannot lose sight of the fact that the Western civilization, having disintegrated certain parts of our societies, tried to consolidate this disintegration. This is a point I asked you to try and follow with me. That is, that the westernized parts of our societies were those parts of our societies that accepted the disintegration of our society. And these disintegrated parts of our societies were consolidated or integrated into what we know today as our universities, our countries, our nation states, our ruling classes, our economically dominant classes, and all the people that we meet across the street today. These intellectuals have always questioned all the traditional values of Islam. And this is their greatest contribution, if that can be called a contribution to the history of Islam. Islamic societies have to be self-sufficient, have to be self-dominant, dominant within themselves. In other words, Islam creates an own system of authority, and all Muslim individuals and social systems must be organized according to the system of authority of Islam itself. When the Quran calls for obedience to Allah, to the Prophet, and to those in authority from among you, it also includes obedience or subservience to any authority outside Islam. The westernized and disintegrated parts of our societies are comprehensively subservient to the West. They are subservient as individuals. Their centers of learning are subservient. Their economic units of production are subservient. Distribution and exchange are subservient. Their political systems are subservient. And as individuals, they are subservients and slaves of the Western civilization. The subservience of the nation state requires closer examination. I shall have to skip this part of it from my paper. We must note, however, that the local westernized elites were too small and too alienated to achieve political legitimacy. The result is that not a single regime in the whole of the Muslim world has managed to achieve any degree of political legitimacy at all. Each one of them is a dictatorship, tyranny of one kind or another. The nation states in former colonial areas, therefore, are agents of Western civilization. In my submission, the Muslim masses, however, have remained largely unmoved by the endeavor of the political thought, the confused political thought of the so-called Islamic parties, and the so-called Islamic effort of some of the rulers of today. It is probably true to say that the entire Ummah has not been activated into a populist movement since the earliest days of Islam. We need to take a closer look at the Muslim masses. Unfortunately, the Western view of the Muslim masses, that they are ignorant, superstitious, lazy, fatalistic, and overcommitted to meaningless ritual, has been too readily accepted by us, by the Muslim intellectuals, including many of the ulama. This is, of course, also the view of the present-day rulers in the Muslim countries. And if we continue to hold this view of our masses, then we cannot blame if our masses take no notice of us. However, the case of Iran would seem to indicate that the Muslim masses today will respond to a leadership which, one, rejects totally the existing order of nation-states and calls for its overthrow. That is the first condition the Muslim masses look for in the leadership. That is the rejection of the existing nation-state order in its entirety. Two, that the leadership commits itself to the elimination of all the political, economic, social, and cultural influences of the Western civilization. Three, that the leadership commits itself to the establishment of an Islamic state. Four, that the leadership declares its belief in the wahda of the Ummah. And five, has no class or other interests of its own. And the leadership is unambiguously and demonstrably muttaqi. Imam Khomeini's contribution, in my opinion, is that through ijtihad, he has overcome the Shi'i theological inhibitions in the field of politics. Through positive leadership, he has transformed the political culture of the Muslim masses of Iran into a powerful and invincible Islamic movement. Through jihad, he has defeated and abolished the nation-state of Iran. And through a populist consensus and participation, he has laid the foundation of an Islamic state and institutions. It is evident that the Islamic movement of Iran and the new Islamic state, both led by the same man, have also defeated their internal and external enemies. Power has not corrupted the leaders, and sacrifices have not diverted the Muslim masses of Iran from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Among the speakers on the first day were two eminent ulama, Shaykh Al-Tamimi, the former Imam of Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, and Ayatullah Jannati, a member of Shura Nigarban in the Islamic Republic of Iran. They spoke in Arabic. Here are two excerpts. Shaykh Tamimi first.
أيها الحفل الكريم، في هذا الاجتماع الكريم، حيث كان من المستحيل أن يعقد هذا الاجتماع في أي عاصمة إسلامية ما عدا طهران، لأن الحكام الآن
It was impossible to hold this meeting in any Islamic capital except Tehran. The rulers are terrified of the Islamic awakening. They are trying to change destiny. The destinies of this world were written by Allah when He created it, and no one can alter them. It is because of the Islamic awakening that the rulers of Muslim countries are trying to legitimize and strengthen Israel, so that there will be no one to fight and resist it. The Beirut onslaught in the summer of 1982 was with the support of these rulers in order to legalize Israel. The youth of the Muslim Ummah are boiling for Islam. The Egyptian revolution has failed, and the Muslim youth in Egypt are boiling for Islam. Allah's help comes to the prophets and the believers when they have lost all other hope. Materially, we have nothing, and no one to look to for help except Allah, just like the Muslims in Iran who are fighting against all forces with the help of Allah.
فنسي من نسي وحفظ من حفظ. ونحن اليوم نعيش في علامات الساعة الصغرى كما وردت في الأحاديث وقد تحقق منها الكثير.
إن إدراك الحق.
The right interpretation is a comprehensive and complete divine system designed to meet the individual, social, worldly and otherworldly needs of humanity. The relationship between religion and politics is no less than religion's relationship to the worship of Allah, if not more. There are about 100 ayats in the Quran about salah, prayer, and about 14 about Sawm, fasting. Most of the Quran is devoted to matters of rule, wilaya, and law, which need a ruler to implement them. It is not possible to establish social justice in the absence of a power to support it. Stripping politics from religion is tantamount to condemning Islam to the status of an orphan child who has no power to defend himself and his rights.
وكلمهم الموتى وحشرنا عليهم كل شيء قبلا ما كانوا ليؤمنوا.
The question of Shia-Sunni differences was raised from the floor. It was dealt with by a Shi'i scholar from Lebanon, Professor Mahmoud Ayoub.
Basically, let me say that both Shi'i and, well, let me call them the Ja'fari school, as well as the four schools of the Sunni majority of Muslims, we all together have looked forward to an ideal of an Islamic state that is beyond really the possibility of an ordinary human being. And no one can deny that the Sihah, that is the 6 hadith collections, do not contain important references to a golden age where a member of the Prophet's family will come to make wrong things right. Now, for both of us, this is in the ghaib, in the hands of God. And I usually say, if the Mahdi is actually in ghaiba and he comes and he is truly the Mahdi, we will all follow him, whether we are Shi'is or Sunnis. And if he is yet to be born, and he will also come to do what the Prophet Sunnah says he would, then we will all follow him, whether we are Shi'is or Sunnis. And that was my argument against the Qadianis. Now, the other, the issue then is an issue of authority, clearly. But as Brother Kalim said, and I think I agree with him, you have it was presented rather in simplistic manner, because one of the most important principles of authority, namely that of Ijma', is common to both the Ja'fari and the other schools of Islamic thought. And in the end, whatever we do, and it wasn't Imam Khomeini alone who called for new ijtihad, this has been called for by Ibn Taymiyyah and by a million other Muslim thinkers who are not Shias, Muhammad Abdul, everybody thinks that it's about time to rethink where we are. And I think we need to do that. And in the end, whatever we achieve together, we hope it will be Islamic. It will be both Shia brothers and both Sunnis. Again, let me repeat that if Sunnism means following the Sunnah of the Prophet, I am a Sunni Muslim. And if Shiaism means following, loving his family, I am also a Shia Muslim. And you can pray whether you put your hands on your head or on your sides, whatever. Prayer is the fard, and the how you do it is ijtihad. So let's take the basics. And the basics, there is plenty. I mean, at least we are not as far as the Protestants and the Catholics.
A colleague of ours who is a Shia at the Muslim Institute is very fond of saying, he says, look, you Sunnis believe in Khalifa and you haven't got him. We believe in Imam and we haven't got him either. So we are quits. Let's be together and find an Amirul Mu'mineen. So that, I think, is a very fair way of summing it up. The theme on the second day was Islamic political concepts. Here are some of the points that were made.
Islamic politics does not approve of any authority on man except the authority of Allah. Man's dignity requires that he should obey and worship Allah alone. The true Islamic political life cannot be realized without a proper system, which may be imama or shura, in order to conduct the affairs of the Muslims and their society. In the Islamic politics, the ummah is a trust and the imam or the khalifa is the trustee. The edifice of the Islamic system is built on two pillars, a conscious ummah and a just imam. In the Islamic political system, the right to govern belongs to the righteous and pious servants of Allah who fear Him. The Islamic politics leads to real independence, freedom, sufficiency, and dependence on Allah alone. It strives for the unity and brotherhood of Muslims and acts to prevent disunity among them.
نيل الكمال المطلق وهو العنصر القائد لهذه السياسة.
إن القرآن الكريم قد عالج هذه القضية الخطيرة بدقة وتفصيل، فقد وردت فيه كلمة حزب.
The ideological anarchy of the modern age has given birth to ideas and concepts that were not known to the mankind in the past. Many of these man-made ideas aim at stripping man of his values and deterrent religious beliefs. One of these ideas is the political party, which claims to stand for certain political beliefs. The institution of the political parties has successfully replaced the divine religions, which have been forced to leave the political arena for these parties. The word party, hizb, has occurred in the Quran 20 times in various forms, singular, dual, and plural. In the singular and dual forms, it is always as Hizbullah, the party of Allah and His Messenger, and Hizb Shaitan, party of Shaitan, the people befriending anything other than Allah and His Messenger. In the plural form, Ahzab, it always means parties inimical to Muslims as against the one brotherhood of Islam. It is not possible for the Muslim to have dual wala, allegiance, one to the party of Allah in the matters of faith and the other to the parties of Marx and Adam Smith in the matters of sociology, politics, and economics.
وفي هذا يقول الزمخشري وهو من أئمة اللغة الكبار وأصل الحزب القوم يجتمعون لأمر حزبهم.
Islam regards all men as equal, and if one does not choose to follow the religion of Islam, he has a right to live in peace and tranquility in a Muslim state as an honored citizen with all rights and privileges. The Quran and Sunnah forbid Muslims from forcing Islam or Sharia on anyone against his will. The main emphasis of Islamic Sharia is on the sanctity of the concept of due process of law to guarantee freedom of life, liberty, property, and honor of every human being.
إن العدالة الإسلامية الآن في عصرنا الحاضر.
The community of Islam is based on divine justice. In a hadith Qudsi, Allah says, "My servants, I have barred myself from injustice and have forbidden it to you, so do not do injustice to each other." Justice is part of all our relationships and deeds in this world. Justice cannot be established or maintained in any society unless its members believe in a unifying faith which becomes the axis upon which the society's laws and regulations of justice are based. Loss of justice in Muslim communities led many Muslims, particularly the youth, to believe in alien political and cultural faiths exported to their countries from outside. The state of injustice in our countries has resulted in the phenomena of irresponsibility and opportunism to the detriment of Islam on the local and international scene.
Marxism and its adapted version presented a great ideological threat. A lot of people argued that many local groups are in fact talking about Marxism when in fact they are talking about Islam, when in fact they are talking about Marxism. And according to one observer, in late 1960s, the major religious leaders of the society, such as late Dr. Hussain and Ayatollah Beheshti, and also Ayatollah Muntaziri, prepared a report and sent it to Najaf, telling Imam Khomeini about the situation in Iran. The report, among other things, brought to Ayatollah Khomeini's attention that the Iranian youth were of the opinion that Islam does not have a political program which can satisfy the problem that the society is facing. A lot of people argue that the realization of this problem provided the impetus for Imam Khomeini's lectures, which began in January 12 to February 8 of 1970 on the topic of Vilayat al-Faqih, which became in fact the book Islamic Government. To summarize, contrary to the view that Vilayat al-Faqih is a radical departure from the Shi'i political thought, in fact it represents a logical next step to it.
The present state of affairs in the Muslim Ummah is perhaps the worst since Islam was revealed to the Prophet. The meanest and most wicked community, damned in the Gospels and the Quran, is using all its skills to insult Muslims, deprive them of their dignity and possessions, and yet the Ummah is seemingly pleased with this state of affairs. Sabra and Shatila and our reaction to them is a phenomenon in itself. After these events, I started to say in public meetings in Egypt that the Arabs as a nation have died, that our generation has collapsed. I thought that some people would protest and agitate, but to my surprise, I found complete agreement and approval from my audiences. Religion is the supreme form of politics. Politics is a part of religion. The Quran bears out that all prophets clashed with the authority, and established authorities tried to kill them or banish them from their areas. This is because Islam wants to raise the status of all members of mankind, and this is seen as a threat by the usurpers of authority. They fear the religion that seeks to stamp out corruption. The rulers accept ulama who cooperate with them. Such ulama can be members of parliaments and cabinets. In this case, there is no separation between religion and politics.
علامات الرضا والسرور.
أيها الإخوة المؤمنون والأخوات المؤمنات، أقولها من موقع المسؤولية. إننا في الواقع الذي نعيشه الآن واقع التحدي.
The modern Muslim suffers from an ideological anarchy that has weakened his concepts about the purpose of life and resulted in complacency and laxity towards events in the outside world. This attitude has helped tendencies inimical to Islam. This laxity has prevented Muslims from thinking about their present situation in order to change it and replace it with a more acceptable state of affairs. This passivity is a result of the common belief that Islam has nothing to do with politics. The majority believes that people in the political life are necessarily deviant from taqwa or piety. Another group believes that Muslims can participate in politics but excludes ulama from this because they, in the view of this group, should remain the models who must not bring disrepute on themselves by indulging in controversial issues. A third group believes that it is the duty of the ulama, being the most learned about Islam, to lead Muslims politically and that their knowledge will prevent them from deviating ideologically and practically. The present state of affairs in which the ulama refrain from taking part in politics has led to opportunities for the agents of neo-colonialism in the Muslim countries to monopolize power and establish un-Islamic states. Some of these states are cosmetically Islamic, adopting the constitutional position that Islam is the religion of the state, while the real power lies in the hands of the kings and presidents who rule by secular Western laws. They have forbidden the participation of ulama. The idea of separation of religion from state has no validity, because Islam could not have come only for a certain era, after which a major part of it was no longer valid. Islam is valid for all time and place. The idea of ghaiba, occultation, in which some ulama of the Shia Ithna Ashariya believe, has left the entire period of occultation without legal rule. This is not right. The idea of wilayatul faqih, either as the faqih being the deputy of the imam or his being an embodiment of the conditions needed for imamah, is the basis on which all Muslims should agree.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وكونوا مع الصادقين وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Inevitably, our discussions led to nationalism, and in particular, Arab nationalism. Shaykh Al-Tamimi dealt with this subject in his own inimitable way. Here he is.
مع نشأة القوميات في بلاد المسلمين والتي مزقتهم تمزيقا وحتى القومية الواحدة مزقت إلى وطنيات.
Nationalist movements divided the Muslim lands. One country was divided into a number of states. For example, Syria was divided under the Sykes-Picot Agreement into Palestine given to the Jews, Lebanon given to the Maronites, and the Emirate of Transjordan was created to protect them. The main parts of Syria only narrowly escaped being further divided. Textbooks in all the Arab countries call the Ottoman state an occupation power, which is just the opposite of what the Ottomans were. The Ottomans were Muslims who ruled by Islam and spread Islam in Europe. Ever since the conquest of Constantinople, European states did not allow the Ottomans to rest and develop their country. This continued until the Dumne Jew, Mustafa Kemal, came. He was a homosexual and eccentric in every way. He is the example of all Arab rulers. Nasser used to call him his model. Sadat regarded him as his example. They did not know that he was a homosexual and eccentric. Who knows, even they might be just like him. The major Islamic peoples, Arabs and Turks, have no history except under Islam. Only the Persians had a previous civilization. With Allah's blessing, Islam rescued them. This is why the textbooks in all Arab countries must be changed. The present textbooks have been prepared by Jews and Orientalists. No one should say, why should we close down universities? These must be closed down so that no one learns wrong ideas. The greatest move taken by Iran was to close down universities. We have suffered a lot from textbooks in the Arab world. Sultan Abdul Hamid refused to hand over Palestine to the Jews, but our generation has offered them not only Palestine, but also Sinai, Golan Heights, and South Lebanon. Perhaps new territories will be offered soon in the future.
الفرس والعرب والأتراك وكل بعدين تأتي الأجناس الأخرى تبع يعني القاعدة مراكز الثقل الحضاري.
Dr. Amanyar from Afghanistan made an impassioned plea on behalf of the Mujahideen now fighting the Soviet Union in Afghanistan. I took the opportunity to make some of these points. It is one of the great tragedies of our time that we cannot reach our brothers in time of their need. This is not just in Afghanistan, this is not just in Pakistan, this is not just in Patani or in Eritrea or any other part. It is in all parts. And the basic problem is that so long as we try to solve our problems in our own geographical areas, we shall remain isolated from the main body of the Ummah of Islam, of the Muslim Ummah. The primary purpose, the primary approach in solving the problem of Afghanistan is not really a problem of Afghanistan. It is a question of liberating all Muslims all over the world. It is a single global Islamic movement that will solve our problems. There is no future in our brothers from Afghanistan living in Pakistan as refugees. The land of Pakistan is a land of Islam. Our brothers from Afghanistan are Muslims. Pakistan is as much their country as the country of those who live in Pakistan. They have as many rights as anybody else in Pakistan. And it is for our brothers from Afghanistan who have been displaced to partake in the Islamic movement of Pakistan, to overthrow the regime there, to set up an Islamic state there, and then move back into Afghanistan. We have next door the Islamic State of Iran. As far as I know, that is the only state, as a state, giving active support to the Mujahideen in Afghanistan. Every other so-called Muslim state is busy trying to prevent the arrival of any kind of help to the Mujahideen in Afghanistan. So our enemies are not the Soviet soldiers in Afghanistan alone. Our enemies are right among us. The political systems that prevent the arrival of help to you brothers in Afghanistan, whether you are physically in Afghanistan or in Pakistan or anywhere else in that matter. It is the political systems around the world that are the main obstacle. We have to remove these obstacles and we have to globalize our problem, not only of Afghanistan, but every other problem that we have. Unless we can globalize it, we cannot solve it. The days when we could have liberation movements defined in terms of geography, limited area, are gone. Because this is precisely what our enemies want us to do. Because they can then confine us to a small area and they can defeat us, they can dismember us, they can destroy us.
I think Brother Musa is asking what provision we have in Shura to protect us from monarchies, kings, etc. Am I right, Musa? If you are saying that, I will answer in these 3 points. 1, the practice of the Prophet ﷺ and the immediate successors after him, Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali. This is the precedent we have that we should stick, that no ruling is according to hereditary reasons. Even when this principle was violated during the Umayyah and the Abbasids, but they still pretend to have bay'ah in the mosque and from the different regions. Even they realize that they have to take bay'ah from people. The second thing is the real provision is the awareness of Muslims that this is the Islam and they should stick to it. There is a very meaningful verse in the Quran, in Surah Al-Zukhruf. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blamed and censored the people of Fir'aun because they accepted the tyranny and dictatorship of Fir'aun. فَاسْتَخَفَّ قَوْمَهُ فَأَطَاعُوهُ إِنَّهُمْ كَانُوا قَوْمًا فَاسِقِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here did not blame Fir'aun. He blamed the people who accepted the dictatorship. The real provision is the awareness, I would say, the political awareness of Muslims that this is their right, really what we say about our rulers, it is not only the fault of minority people just came from the blue to rule us. It is our societies also. They are ignorant, they are decadent, they are submissive, they accept it to be ruled in this way, and that's what they deserve, and they got it. The third point is the specific regulations of Shura should be agreed upon, really, and put in whatever you like, a constitution, whatever, and the people respect it because it comes from them and not dictated upon them.
On the third day, the theme was Islamic political movements and personalities. These are some of the points made.
ومن هذه التجارب الإصلاحية تجربة فذة نشأت بالمغرب الإسلامي في القرن السادس على يد أحد العلماء السياسيين
Al-Mahdi ibn Tumart, an alim of the 6th Hijri century, founded the Muwahid movement that conquered and ruled North Africa and Andalus. In his youth, Ibn Tumart went from Morocco to Baghdad, where he studied for 10 years and was taught by many teachers, one of whom was Imam Ghazali. He returned to his homeland and started to call people to change their ways of life. The ruler of his time, Ali ibn Yusuf bin Tashifin, did not approve of his style of da'wah and therefore exiled him and later attempted to kill him. Ibn Tumart now changed his style of da'wah from peaceful call for change to a revolutionary method to replace the system by a new state committed to his ideas. Ibn Tumart himself did not live long to see the fruits of his da'wah. Through his writings and speeches, he had started the process to change the existing system. From the small fortress community that he founded in Sus, which he used to struggle against the Murabitun for a decade until his death, his followers continued the jihad until the Murabit state was toppled and Muwahid state was established. Ibn Tumart made it a condition for Imam to be a mujtahid in both usul and furu'a, fundamentals and branches of the Islamic sciences, which ensured a unity of knowledge and politics. In order to emphasize this aspect of his political philosophy, Ibn Tumart called his movement Al-Muwahidun, the believers in Tawheed.
على أنظمة سياسية مختلفة وكانت له لقاءات مع العديد من الأمراء والولاة.
This movement played a significant role in the transformation of creation of 13 nationalities, and this was largely achieved through the creation of a powerful state which later came to be defined as Sokoto Caliphate, with an elaborate administrative structure and institutions. The political boundaries of the Caliphate covered a vast area of approximately 250,000 square miles, within what later came to be known as the Federal Republic of Nigeria and large parts of the Republic of Niger and Cameroon. The power of Sokoto Caliphate extended to include 13 areas in the Republic of Mali and Upper Volta. An important feature of the movement was the establishment of an emirate system of government in this part of West Africa. Subsequently, about 30 emirates, in addition to numerous sub-emirates, were either transformed from the existing political units, such as the states of Gobir, Zamfara, Kebbi, Kanu, Zazzau, Daura, Katsina, or established from the grassroots in places like Bauchi and Ilorin. On the international level, the Caliphate established diplomatic relations and opened new channels of communications with neighbors to the east, west, north, and in the areas of trade and politics and culture. Although it is not the intention of this paper to discuss the essence and nature of this movement, it is important to note here that the Sokoto Jihad movement, which was intellectually conceived, invoked in the minds of its leaders a conception of ideal society and a philosophy of a revolution. Perhaps what distinguished this movement from other jihad movements in the 19th century was that its maturation and fruition was based on a deep-rooted tradition of reforms which could be traced as far back as the 17th century.
والإمام حسن البنا لم يقف في تصديه لمؤامرة فصل الدين عن الدولة عند حد توضيح المفاهيم وتقرير القواعد والأصول ولكنه
Imam Hassan al-Banna was among the first to stand up against the Western onslaught on Muslim communities to empty Islam from its essential characteristics, which are the source of its power. The Western attack was centered on the idea of the separation of politics from state. The Imam struggled through writing, making speeches, and by organizing people. He established Al-Ikhwan al-Muslimun in March 1928 and continued to lead it from success to success until he was martyred by the ruling clique during the night of 13th February 1949. Imam Hassan al-Banna's effort was not limited to cleansing the beliefs and presenting the religion in modern style. His efforts extended to a practical program to educate and prepare the Ummah according to the divine program of enjoining good and forbidding evil. He mixed the approach of Al-Afghani to reform the society through rule and authority and Muhammad Abdu's idea of reforming through education. Muslim reformers have a duty to come forward if they see that the existing system does not follow Islam. They are duty-bound to take away the executive power from people who do not believe in the totality of Islam. In the Imam's belief, government is the heart of the social reform. If the government is corrupt, the whole society will be corrupted. And if the government is correct, the whole society will be corrected. The primary duty of the state is to take care of Islamic da'wah and to unite Muslims. Islam cannot be implemented under a government that does not care whether or not Islam is implemented. Islam, in its true form, can be implemented only in a state which believes in the principles of Islam and is committed to its implementation. Most of the Islamic injunctions are not individual matters. Instead, they are to be implemented by governments. This is why the Imam Hassan al-Banna considered the establishment of the Islamic State to implement Islam in its entirety the great aim of Al-Ikhwan al-Muslimun movement.
20वीं सदी में इस्तेमारियत से आज़ादी हासिल करने के बाद आम तौर पर आलम इस्लाम में इस्लामी इनकलाब की आवाज़ें बुलंद होने लगी.
The 20th century has witnessed the emergence of Islamic movements which understood that Islam is not just a few rituals, but a complete system of religion and state, and that without the establishment of an Islamic state, this idea cannot be put into action. These movements did not succeed anywhere except in Iran. In all other parts, Islamic movements have entered into compromises with local regimes, accepting some reforms and a share in the power, instead of insisting on the establishment of a complete Islamic system. The Islamic message has always been same in all ages. According to Islam, it is twofold: faith in Allah and a conscious rejection of shirk. The Quran has declared time and again that man's failure and corruption are due to shirk, that is, by attributing Allah's powers to others. The Islamic message is based on the call to Allah and Tawheed. Unless and until Muslims free themselves completely from shirk, they cannot become the needed members of the Islamic movement. This is the example of the Prophet. Adopting any other way would not lead to success but to total failure.
हर मुल्क में ये इस्लामी तहरीकें फिक्री और अमली इंतशार में फंस कर रह गई हैं.
Maulana Abul Ala Maududi says that in the period of monarchy, Islam was reduced from a universal movement and mission to a mere religion. It was discarded because the other people regard Islam as a personal matter of the Muslims only. Maulana Maududi has emphasized Islam's ideological and universal humanitarian aspects apart from its individual and personal aspects. Islam is a way of life. As such, it demands dominance to prove its worth and eminence as compared to other ways of life. Islamic revolution is inevitable for political dominance. Herein lies the solution to all human problems. Maulana Maududi has projected Islam as a movement. Those who join this movement and strive for its domination will automatically become the flag bearers of this universal movement. A time will come when entire mankind will benefit from the blessings of Islam. This ideological and reformatory struggle is known as jihad. It is a weapon of the Muslims for the propagation and dominance of Islam. Maulana Maududi has presented this concept throughout his writings and particularly in Al-Jihad fil Islam.
In our discussions, whether it be at home or in more formal surroundings here, we talk about two issues. One is the role of political parties, and the other is how many imams and khulafa can there be. On these issues, some of the opinions expressed were these.
الواقع أن التنظيم أو العمل الحزبي إذا أخذ بالمفهوم الغربي
The party framework based on the Western model, which works for the interests of an individual or class or group of people, is rejected in Islam. But party is acceptable as a means of organizing the movement. We cannot leave it to secular movements leading the society through their parties. Parties may remain in the Islamic society after the success of the Islamic revolution, so far as they are committed to the principles of Islam.
كل هذه الأساليب التي ينتجها التصور الغربي للحزبية أمر يرفضه الإسلام.
The Ummah as a whole is an open system in which all Muslims can carry out all kinds of activities in a unified, complementary manner. But this does not exclude us from having within the Ummah institutions, functional institutions to perform specific tasks for the Ummah as a whole. For instance, our universities, seats of learning, or factories and offices and departments. All of these can be formed and can have separate identities so long as they set out to serve the needs of the entire Ummah, that they are not exclusivist to some part of the Ummah. This is where the problem arises. As for the particular nature of the political party, my own view is that the political party is a peculiar product of the Western political experience. It is the Western civilization's need to find ways of expressing itself that the political party has been invented, has been developed as part of the political process that has developed in the peculiar conditions of Europe and North America and the so-called democratic West as we know it. The political party in an Islamic concept is indeed as divisive as Maulana Sulaiman Tahir has made it out to be. So there is no conflict, contradiction, dichotomy here between organized work and the pursuit of the goals of the Ummah as a whole. Shaykh Al-Tamimi.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يجب أن لا نخضع الأحكام.
We cannot bend rules to conform to existing situations. There must be only one Imam at a time. During the time of the Abbasi and Ottoman Khilafats, there were many rulers, but they used to claim to be governors under one Khalifa. The Prophet has said that if bay'ah, allegiance, is offered to two Imams, kill the latter of them. If we allow two Imams at a time, we will have to allow 3 and 4 and 100, as is the case now. This generation must be the generation of unification. We must not be pressurized by situations to the point of altering rules.
الطرف الذي أدى بنا وهذه سنة من الله في الكون إلى أن تذهب دولة الإسلام.
من المتفق عليه عند الجميع فيما أعتقد أن الخلافة الراشدة بعد حياة رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم
الخلافة الراشدة is a model for all Islamic rule. The Khalifa must be one. He is not a symbol in Islam, he is the actual ruler. The jurists who have allowed more than one Khalifa have stipulated that both of them must be implementing Sharia. If any one of them or both of them do not implement the law of Allah, they will not be recognized as rightful rulers.
ومن خلال تراجم أصحابها الذين عاشوها. وبالتالي أنا متأكد أن ليس كل جوانب هذه الخلافة الراشدة قد نقلت لنا.
Assalamu alaikum.
Very briefly, brother.
Yes. Dr. Siddiqui, I'd like to ask you a question and also want your opinion. If we are searching for a model of Islamic state in the areas where there are probably a billion Muslims under monarchies, dictatorships. Now, if you're seeking a model for the struggle to establish operational Islam and to unite the Ummah, should we not take guidance from Islamic Republic from their experiences of jihad, formation of government, application of the Quranic laws, and also probably, as far as my information is concerned, applications of economic order, foreign policy, and Islamic technology. I think if we did that, if we look towards them for guidance, we will probably be saving a lot of energy searching and debating on controversial issues. I want to know if you think whether, irrespective of the madhab, whether we should, all of us, seek guidance from the Islamic Republic.
My own view is that once an Islamic state comes into being, thereafter the choice of a Muslim is no longer whether to identify himself with that state or not. Once that state has come into being, it is the bounden duty of every Muslim to work in cohesion with and allegiance to that state. And of course, the question of learning, we have to learn from all experience, and of course, most of all, from the experience of Iran, of the Islamic State of Iran, of the Islamic movement of Islam, of Iran, the Islamic revolution of Iran. So that has been my position for a very long time. Now, brother Abdul Rahman Sultan.
الحقيقة هناك نقاط مرور عابر يعني قضية الخلافة وإقامة الخلافة هذا هو مطلب الجميع وبما أنه مطلب الجميع لا نريد أن نختلف على خليفة واحد أو على
Whosoever believes in the possibility of the plurality of khalifas should establish khilafah in their parts of the world, and those who believe in only one khalifa should establish khilafah in the part of the world under their control.
أو ليقيم هو ومن معه في ذلك المكان خليفة آخر ثم بعد ذلك نتفق.
بكثير من التجوز نستخدم كلمة الاستعمار التي نعني بها نشر العمران والبناء من الناحية اللغوية، وهي كلمة
At a time of weakness and decay, Muslim communities were taken over by Western colonialism. The colonial era created grave social evils and left them behind in our societies. During the period of direct rule, the colonialists transferred to our societies all their diseases. Through their educational, cultural, and political policies, they created a new westernized elite which they appointed to rule when they departed from our lands. Members of this elite are Muslim by name, but are more than Western in their culture and thought. The most important evils introduced by the colonialists in our societies were nationalism, which replaced the universal Islamic brotherhood based on the concept of one Islamic ummah, and secularism, which turned Islam out of the political field and confined it to the mosques. Muslims are slowly awakening to these evils. They are struggling to get rid of them in order to live a complete Islamic life.
وقد يستوطن الأرض بعد ذلك أو يتخذها مزرعة ومصنعا.
إيه هدفهم؟ هدفهم إسقاط الخلافة ومنع قيام الخلافة، إسقاط الجهاد ومنع الجهاد تحت اسم السلام وهو استسلام. في أهداف تانية جزئية وهي منع.
The overthrow of the Ottoman Khilafah was one of the main aims of the enemies of Islam, in addition to the abolition of jihad, the Sharia, and the seeds of Islamic learning and culture. After a long struggle to this end, the European powers succeeded in destroying the Khilafah through Mustafa Kemal in 1924. Since then, more Muslim lands and peoples have fallen to enemy rule than ever before in the long history of Islam. Islam without politics is mere ritual. Islam is not worldly or religious rites alone. It is religio-political. This unique attribute of Islam was undermined with the demise of the Khilafah, which is the supreme form of Islamic politics. The enemies who overthrew the Khilafah are those now struggling to prevent its re-emergence today.
من تقدم لاهتمامهم بالسياسة وإن لم تكن لهم طقوس. ليس الإسلام دينا فحسب ولا سياسة فحسب.
The seminar proper ended after the morning session on Saturday, after adopting certain recommendations and resolutions. I shall return to these later. In the afternoon, the Muslim Institute had invited the Muslim community living in and around London to a public meeting. Here are glimpses of some of the speakers who addressed the public meeting.
Islam came to Afghanistan. Until now, alhamdulillah wal minna, 99% are Muslim.
The situation in Somalia is not different in any way, shape or form. Either colonial history or the present system.
في أحد أيام الشهر الحرام ذي القعدة 1400 هجريا الموافق سبتمبر 1980 طبق جنون صدام حسين وهداه غباؤه إلى مناطحة ثورة شعبية فوارة.
और ये मैं यकीन दिलाता हूँ कि इस्लाम पर जब बेचारगी आती है, बेबसी आती है, गुर्बत आती है, तो वो वहाँ ज़्यादा इस्लाम का गुलजार और मरगजार पैदा होता है.
I offer my praise to Allah Pak for the unification, for the unity of the Muslim Ummah, since we require one religious leader at the top.
इस्लामी हुकूमत का सबसे बड़ा फर्ज ये है कि वो अमर बिल मारूफ और नही अनिल मुनकर और
فأحسن الأقوال هو أن الله بلسان رسوله الكريم قد دعا الأمة الإسلامية إلى النفرين وإلى الهجرتين وإلى الجهادين وإلى الغزوين.
أن السياسة إذا تحولت إلى فن جاف ولم يدخلها تقوى الله ستكون خطرا على الإسلام والمسلمين، حتى لو انطلقت من المسلمين، لأن كثيرا من المسلمين يبدأون السياسة من موقع التقوى ويتأخر التقوى لتتحرك السياسة من مواقع الشرق والغرب.
ما لكم؟ الإيمان بالغيب هو الأساس. ماذا يجري في أفغانستان؟ كيف يقاتل هذا الشعب؟ إحدى القوتين العظميين لا يملك طعاما ولا شرابا ولا أسلحة، ولكنه يكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر، فيزلزل الله روسيا وما تملك والطائرات وما تزأر والمدفعية وما تضرب. أليس هو الله؟ أليس هذا النداء هو لله؟ والله لن يخذل من ينادي.
The seminar made certain recommendations. It also made certain declarations concerning the basic concepts of state and politics in Islam and the political objectives of the Ummah. I'm afraid I shall have to read these to you. First, the basic concepts. 1. All authority belongs to Allah, and any Muslim state that makes itself subservient to a power or ideology outside Islam is in effect in revolt against the rule of Allah. 2. Deen and politics form an indivisible whole, and any formulation of Islam on the basis of separation of religion and politics is not acceptable to the Ummah. 3. The political role of Islam and the political role of Kufr are two opposite trends in history. Neither has anything in common with the other. 4. The political party framework as found in Western democracies is divisive of the society and therefore does not suit the Ummah. 5. Jihad is an essential obligation on every Muslim at all times and must become an essential part of the modern Islamic movement. Now the political objectives of the Ummah. 1. To eliminate all authority other than that of Allah and His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. 2. To eliminate nationalism in all its shapes and forms, in particular the nation states. 3. To unite all Islamic movements into a single global Islamic movement to establish the Islamic state. 4. To reconstruct the world of Islam into a system of Islamic states linked together by such institutions as are necessary to express the unity of the Ummah. 5. To eliminate all political, economic, social, cultural and philosophical influences of the Western civilization that have penetrated the world of Islam. 6. To re-establish a dominant global Islamic civilization based on the concept of Tawheed. 7. To create the necessary institutions for the pursuit of al-amr bil ma'ruf wa nahi anil munkar. And 8. To establish adl in all human relationships at all levels throughout the world. In the end, we recited the Dua Wahdat together.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لا إله إلا الله إلها واحدا ونحن له مسلمون. لا إله إلا الله ولا نعبد إلا إياه مخلصين له الدين ولو كره المشركون. لا إله إلا الله ربنا ورب آبائنا الأولين. لا إله إلا الله وحده 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 أنجز وعده ونصر عبده وأعز جنده وهزم الأحزاب وحده. فله الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت ويميت ويحيي وهو حي لا يموت بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير.